Welcome to DDT Fundamentals video. You should have already watched a PowerPoint presentation and video about why we need document type definitions, and this video will actually help you get your feet wet and learn how to do some of the basic syntax and coding of document type definitions. Alright, let's look at what I consider a building block of your DDT, which is the element. An element is any element that you have in your XML document. You need to declare it in your DDT, and you do it this way. You're going to type in your document type definition in all caps, and I'll make it a little bit bigger. So it starts with an open less than sign, exclamation mark, element in all caps, and then you're going to define the element name. We happen to have an element name location, and then we're going to define what kind of content type it has. So in this case it's going to be PC data. PC data stands for parse character data. A lot of the elements that we use and the ones that I have you create for exercises and the homework are used parse character data. You only define an element once, remember that, and it must pretty much follow that recipe. If you have any deviations, like you do something like that, it won't recognize it. If you add spaces, extra spaces, it might be okay, but it might squawk. Again, pretty much anything you forget in here, it will give you problems when you go to validate your document type definition. Let's just look at a way. Let's continue on. We have PC data. We also have empty, which we could use. We don't really use it in any of the exercises. You might see Goldberg in the textbook use it, and basically this is when you have an element that merely holds an attribute, and we'll talk about attributes in a couple minutes, but you might have an element that is merely a container for an attribute, and in that case there would be no PC data in the element, it would be empty. So this is one of your other content types you could have in there, but again, PC data is probably 95% of the time what you're going to see. With any, which you read about in the chapter, we don't use that. That looks something like this. I just bring it up to basically say we don't use that. I'm not real certain on the provenance or the history of why any is there, because it seems like you would always want to have some kind of control over your content type, but nevertheless it was included and you got to read about it, but we do not use it in this class. With your XML documents, you're going to have nesting, and we talked a little bit about this in the presentation about how it gives you control on what order you might find your how you want to control the order of the nesting of your XML document. And how we do that is using a technique called sequence, or sequence of children. And I'll do an example here for you. It would look something like this. We would have, again, we have our little recipe here. We're defining, not really defining Wonder here because we have not given it a content type. We're merely saying element Wonder, and then we're going to create a sequence of elements that will be nested inside of Wonder. So it'll go something like this. And then again we have the greater than bracket sign there at the end. So this is the recipe for a sequence, and what this says is we have element Wonder, and inside of Wonder, we use that word inside, outside. So inside of Wonder, you'll have the element name, location, and height. And how all these elements are separated is by a comma. and they always go inside a open and close paren set. In a if we were to, and again, I'm just using Notepad++ as sort of my scratch pad. This is not how you would do it in real life in terms of an actual XML document versus a DDT. The code would look this way, but the document would be a little more proper. So say I had Wonder, and I wanted to have name in there. It would look something like this. Oh, it might be Mark. And location. Oh. Notepad++ helps a little bit more in this version than it used to, so sometimes that can be handy. See if it gives it to me. There we go. And then we would do height. Close that out. And as you can see, I have not this is not XML code, none of it's colored or anything. It's just, the code's there, but it hasn't been sort of highlighted. But anyways, this is what it would be defining. Wonder is really an it's really just a place, a container. It has no PC data in it, nor does it have an attribute. But inside of Wonder, we have name, location, and height, and they have to appear in that order. If we wanted to put data in our XML document, say here, I don't know, we could put, actually let's change these names to something a little more appropriate. Pardon me. Something a little more appropriate to the examples used in the book. Boy, I have no idea how high it is, but let's say it's 50 feet high. And I messed up that XML tag. Let's fix that. You probably already caught that. Okay, so here we have our little baby XML document, and we have our little baby document type definition syntax up here. Now, we've defined a sequence up here, or declared it. It looks like, oh, well, Wonder is an element how we have conventionally understand it, which means that PC data could go in there. That is not the case. If I start typing here, like, I don't know, I put data in here, what would I put in there? Say, let's just put Asia for where the Wonder might be. If I put that in there, I will get a validation error, because there is no, I have not declared Wonder yet as something that can hold PC data, which that is there. So we would do something like this. We would go element, and then Wonder again, because we're going to define it, and then we would put in our PC data content type, close it out, and then we could type that. If we don't put that in there, we take that out, that will throw a validation error. One of the other things you can do with document type definitions is you can define how many times an element is used. And one of the techniques we use for that, or that DDTs has, is something called cardinality. And I'm just going to put out the text here, and we can look at it, and then I'll delete it off here. But you can define the number of occurrences. So here, I'm just going to get rid of these little bullets. We have an asterisk, which means 0 or more times. We have the plus sign, which means 1 or more times, and then the question mark, which means 0 or 1 time only. How we do that is that in the DDT, again, this is our little baby document type definition syntax up here, and say we have say we have two heights that we use for whatever reason. We decide to code it up this way. and we do this one in meters, and meters there would be less. I don't know what that would break down to, but say we'll put 30 there, and we don't need to save it. What we would do here is that because height is being used twice, because as it is now, if I were to validate this, and I had an extra height in there, it would not be valid. But before I put that in there, let's just back up a second, and we just have this. This is legal, or excuse me, valid, and so what this says is that name has to come first, then location, then height, and what it also says is each one of these can only appear once inside of Wonder. Okay? So our XML document, say we want to have, again, our height element, we want to use that again, then we need up here to put a symbol for what kind of occurrence event we want to have happen. So we could have it be 0 or more times, 1 or more times, or 0 one time only. Well, we want it more than one, so why don't we just go ahead and put in a plus sign 1 or more times, and then if I were to validate this XML document against our little baby document type definition, it would indeed be valid. So this is cardinality or ordinance. This is something I normally, definitely will have you do in an exercise and homework, but you also will see something like this on a test as well. Again, if the element without a quantifier shows up, then it just means it can only appear once. Okay, so let's keep moving on here. That's cardinality. Let's look at attributes. Attributes always go inside of a of an element. Let's define our element again here. Wonder, and remember we were going to make it so it could hold PC data. In this case, actually, we could make it empty if we want, so maybe I'll go ahead and do that, even though I said we will probably not use them very often, but in this example I'll show you. And now we need to, okay, so say in Wonder we have something like this. We want to have an attribute in there, and let's give it a code. And then we'll set that equal to something like this, 001. Up here we've defined Wonder now. It's been declared as an element, but it's an empty element, so it's not going to have any PC data. I'm not going to type any data in here, right? That's not allowed because I haven't defined it as PC data. If I want to do this, then I need to switch this back to PC data like that. We can go either way with that. I'm just going to delete that and go back to empty again. And then now we have to define our attribute. Doesn't matter where it happens in the DDT as long as it's defined. So we have an attribute, and now we have a name, attribute name we need to define, but we need to tell the parser where this attribute name, where it lives, because it always has to live inside of an element. So how we do that is we say Wonder, and then we're going to say that we're going to define this attribute name, and by virtue of putting Wonder before it, we say where it lives. So the name is code, and then we have to say what its status is. Is it required, optional? Basically, you have two options, two choices to do. You can do required or implied, and implied means optional. Again, typically we use required. There might be reasons why you might use implied and make it optional. Goldberg might use implied occasionally, but I tend to, when I assign this, for you to do this in an assignment, exercise, or homework, I usually have you make it required. So let's make it required. Again, all caps. The caps mean something, so you have to do all uppercase letters. And there, we're done. We've basically defined, declared how this attribute can be used. We do the attribute, and pardon me, I wrote that wrong. It's at list, not attribute. At list is what we use for our attribute command. Wonder, and then the attribute name, which is code, and then it's required. No parentheses there. It's a little tricky, but there are no paren signs there. It's just pound sign and then required. And that defines, allows us to use this attribute. All right, let's look at some default values and how we might do that. Default values are values that we would use inside of an attribute, the value that's actually put in an attribute. So I'm just going to copy over some code and we can take a look at it. Let me clean it up just a little bit. Again, we have a little baby DDT up top, and then our little XML document down here. Again, not really a real-life situation. These are just code snippets. Up top, we have, so what we're going to try to do is define a default value for a attribute value. So we have height here, that's a element, and inside of height we have an attribute called units. And we want to set it as default. So when we're entering, if someone is following our document type definition, again, this is just a baby one up here, and we want to make sure that whatever value they put in for the attribute units, it gets set to feet. We do it this way. Now, what happens with default is that if the units are, if the value for units is typed in as feet, that's fine, it validates. If meters is put in, again, this is how default works, that's fine, because it's saying you've put something in there, that's fine, as long as you've essentially overridden, in a way, feet as a value. That validates. And if you have no attribute at all, you haven't typed anything in right here, then it just gets set as feet, and it validates that way. So it sort of is a kind of a fail-safe situation for a document when you want there to be some value put in there. Either feet, that's fine. Again, meters, then you've overridden that value, and that's fine. If you haven't put anything in there, or your user, whoever's using your XML document or creating data, that default setting, which is, this is the recipe for that, you always put in C data, which is character data, it will set that to feet for this third one here, and you're good to go. That's default. For fixed value, which you should have read in the reading, let's look at a slightly different example, and the code is slightly different for that. I'm going to just paste it in again and clean it up. Again, we have our little baby DDT up here and our little baby XML code snippet here. We've defined element height as an element, so we're using it here against PC data. We do have PC data in there. And then we have an attribute named units. So we're do at list, And here's our little recipe for that. It's an attribute that goes inside of height, the height element, so we had to type that there. And then our attribute name. And then here is our sort of code for that, which is different from default, and that's fixed. And fixed, if you notice, has a pound sign there, and you must use that or it won't work. And again, the syntax for that is all uppercase, fixed. And then we say, what's the value it's fixed to? So here is our fixed, our XML code that should be following this rule that we've set up, our declaration. And basically what it does is, okay, we've set it to feet. Okay, the first one, that's easy. That validates. That's good. And the third one actually validates, because what it does is you haven't given it any value, you haven't done anything, and it'll just set it to feet. Whereas the second one here, or the user has tried to override what that value is with meters, and that will not validate. And so your document won't validate, and you'll get an error, and it'll tell you, incorrect value or something like that, or it'll give you some kind of hint how to fix it. I just want to make a small point. Okay, we've looked at fixed and default, and we've looked at ways to set up occurrences or cardinality, and they, at first glance, they seem kind of simple and like, what's the big deal? And actually, that's very true. If you're thinking like, big whoop, it's the 21st century. Don't we have a technology that allows you to set more parameters for how an XML document is created? And yes, the answer is yes. We have XML schema, which we'll talk about in a few weeks. The thing we need to remember about document type definitions is this technology is very old. It's older than me, and perhaps older than most people in this course. It's really caveman computer technology. But as I mentioned, XML came out of a world that's sort of pre-World Wide Web. The technology that predated it, DDTs, did come out of a pre-web world. They've been around for decades. So you have to remember that it's, at the time, was some of these, like fixed and default, were actually quite useful and considered cutting-edge technology. It's not anymore, but there are businesses and professions that still use document type definitions, as I mentioned, and these are some of the syntax and recipes, if you will, you should learn. So I'm just going to soldier on here. We're going to talk about choices, and let me just copy in some code again here. Choices, what they allow you to do is to give some kind of choice to your document creator on how that document is created. So we have, for elements, we can do a choice, and what we do here is, we've already seen how we do a sequence. So we might have an element that's going to have this container, or you might think of it as the root node, Ancient Wonders, and inside of Ancient Wonders we're going to have many wonders. So there could be one wonder, or there could be many, as we know from the plus sign. So this is a little sequence. It's kind of tricky, because when you think of sequence, again, you think of a lot of elements. But this is how you set up nesting. It's the sequence technique, but we're really making it so wonder can be inside of Ancient Wonders, and there can be many wonders. Okay, so inside of wonder, again, this is the sort of recipe that we follow. We do element and then wonder, and then inside of that we can create a choice of what shows up in the XML document. So we could have just PC data if we wanted inside a wonder. Alright, I open up a couple examples from the examples download from the textbook, And we have a document type definition here and our .xml file here. These are proper XML files instead of doing our baby ones as we were doing. What I'm going to do is move to other view, and how I do that is right click on the tab itself and then move to other view, and you can move the pane around like that. And what this does is it's nice if you're working on, especially for your document type definition / XML exercise, it allows you to see both of them rather than having to toggle back and forth between the full pane view. So what we have, let's dig into this. We have element, which is defining our Ancient Wonders root element, right? Root element, and everything is inside the root element, and every XML document has to have a root element, remember. If I close it, everything goes inside it. And then inside of Ancient Wonders, we have wonder right here. So we can see the wonders, right? And it can occur one or more times. So at least has to occur once. Inside of wonder, and this is how we do that here, we do element again and then wonder, is we have some choices. And I'm just going to make it, let's see, make the text a little smaller so we can see that. And what we have is PC data here. We talked about that a little bit earlier, where I can have data right inside a wonder. And this is a little bit different because I'm doing it inside of a choice sequence of elements, and I can have multiple different elements occurring or not occurring, or I can have PC data. So if we look here in this one, this is one of the choices we're allowed to do this. This validates inside a wonder. I can have PC data inside a wonder. I can also have a name or location, because that's one of our element choices there, and I can have city or country. And I'm just going to move this back to single. Actually, I'll just make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Yep. And I can have city or country, and this all still validates. And I can have these multiple times because we have our asterisk here. So this validates as is. If I click validate now, you get a little chime and it says DTD validation XML is valid. If I were to copy this and paste it, save it, and run it again, we should get a validate now, and indeed it is valid because we have this for 0 or more times. So inside of these we have this sequence of choices, if you will. Each one of these have to be defined, so remember that we have to go in and do name, it's PC data, location, PC data, right? Location, we have PC data here, city, again PC data, and country. For your DTDs, you do not have to put these in any sequence. I could define them this way, like that, if I wanted to. That's fine. The only thing with that is that sometimes it just gets a little difficult for you to kind of keep your code in order, and when you need to change things or problem solve or whatever, it's just kind of handy. It's like if you have name here and here, it's like, oh, I define that, location, and so on and so forth. So, but with DTDs, you can literally have anything in any order. I could have taken this and put it down here, save it, and run it over here, excuse me, run the validator, and it'll still validate. But again, it's just kind of visually, I think it's a little easier to debug and to create it, so it would be common to see it in this way. Just remember that we're now when we're doing validation, the author really doesn't talk about validation until next week's readings, but in order to do an exercise, you have to do validation. And so when we validate, we're always running the validation from the .xml file. It's the driver file, if you will. If you look up here, you can see this is how we connect our XML file to the document type definition. And what it says is, basically, I'm not going to read it all out, but you have doc type, and then it's the root node that is always used. This is how it's connected, right? It's saying to the DDT to validate this XML document, and it starts with this root node. So we have the root node there. System, all that's saying is that this is this document type definition is outside of the XML document, and then after that we have the actual file name. So you can see the file name right here. This is another one that I would just copy and paste the same way with this, is just copy it out of one of the examples and paste it right into your exercise to get yourself started. The only thing you have to remember is that you have to update this. You're going to be updating that, and you're going to update the file name. And just make sure these file names agree with each other. This can be anything. It doesn't really have to be that. It's whatever you name it. But it's kind of nice if you're going to work on, say, week 3 exercise, that you call it week 3 exercise.xml, week 3 exercise.dtd. So just something to be mindful of. And we're checking XML syntax if we want to just know, do I have an actual error in here? That's where I go and check XML syntax. Indeed, I do on line 5. You just saw me create it. Save it. If I want to, and then I can check to see that the syntax is correct. If I want to validate, which is what we're doing now, you go to validate now, and that's how you find out that information. Okay, so that's choice. So let's look at choice for attributes. I'm going to close this out, and we'll clean that up, and we're going to, I'm just going to copy in some more code again, a little baby one. So I'm not going to show you the XML document. Okay, let's look at choice for attributes. I've just opened up some of the an example from the examples download, and here we have a document type definition where we have, I'm just going to move this to other view. We have wonder that we've defined, we've created, that has a sequence or element that lives inside of it, an element child of wonder. So we have height, right? We have height here, and then we define height to contain PC data. This is all review now, so there's our PC data. And we've also created some attributes, and what we've done is made those attributes so that they can be, the values can have a choice between one value or the other. So we do our at_list command, height, because this attribute is going to go inside the element height. The attribute name is units, so here we have units, and then that has to be set equal to either inches or feet, and it's required. So over here, if I'm inside of my XML document. Remember, that's the driver document, if you will, when you go to validate. So you have to be clicked inside of this. I'm clicked in there, and I go to XML tools, and I go to validate, and I get an error. Validation of current file using document type definition. Here's my result. Error. Value meters for attribute units of height is not among the enumerated set. Element height does not carry attribute units. Okay. So we have two problems here. So let's run it again, or validate again, and okay, value meters for attribute units of height is not among enumerated list. Okay, so over here we have inches and we have feet. Those are the two values that we're allowed to use in our XML document. So let's switch this. It's the same value over here, so pardon, we might as well put it to feet. I could have put it to inches if I wanted to. Now if we run it, we'll save it. You always have to save it. If it's red, it's not saved. If it's blue, it's saved. And you have to be inside of your XML document for it to validate. Validate now. Okay, we have one less arrow, but we still have one. Element height does not carry attribute units. So this is required that we have an attribute in height. So what I need to do is create that attribute, and I'm going to do something like this, and I'm going to set it equal to, and here I could do inches, right, instead, and maybe we'll do something like, I don't know, 563 inches. Save it. And now if I go to run it, we should have some luck. Let's take a look here. Validate now, and indeed it is valid. So that's choice for attributes.